The Leaf Pile by Cody Zellers. Who doesn't love kicking up a freshly raked pile of leaves? You know you shouldn't. Somebody took all the time to gather them up off their lawn and everything, but still, it's great. When Sean would kick them, he would lift his feet as high as he could and shout above the crackling, "Be free, be free, be free." His terrier, Spork, would yip and snap at the scattering pieces like they were escaping birds. Mondays after school were the best because Dads had been doing yard work all weekend. It was on just such a Monday, late in October, when Sean and his friends came upon a most irresistible leaf pile. They had been on a mission to devastate everyone they could find, and it had taken them almost a half a mile out of their usual suburban stomping grounds, out into some unknown territory. That's where they found it. It had to be chest high and tightly packed. Only one thing, it was in the graveyard. Now, they were little kids, only about 10 years old, 10 and a half if you ask them. And the cemetery, especially around sunset, is not a place where they had ever set foot. It was a place that they had only heard about in stories. None of them good stories. Sean egged the others on, but they all hesitated and suddenly found reasons to get home. "You might break your foot on a tombstone," one said. "I gotta have dinner," said another. They left Sean and his dog in the long shadow of that perfect hill of leaves. The dry ones yet to fall in the trees above shimmered in the last rays of the setting sun. A breeze rattled them into a choral hiss. Their colors blurred deep brown, burnt orange, and crimson red as they quivered, scratching together like a million cricket wings. Sean watched as the others disappeared down the road, but he resolved that he would run through the pile, exult in its crispy waves, and tell them all about it tomorrow. Their guts would sour with jealousy. He crouched into a running start position. He looked to Spork. The animal sat rooted to the spot. There was no playful anticipation in its eyes like usual. Its head was cocked to one side, listening to the trees. The hissing and scratching had become as loud as rattlesnakes. Sean quickly went from enthusiasm to just wanting to get it over, so he dashed into the pile. No more than 3 strides in, the ground disappeared from beneath his feet. His momentum carried him a short distance, but his thighs painfully hit the opposite wall of an open ditch. He fell backwards, deep into a pile of dank leaves. It was pitch black, and he couldn't feel either side of the hole he had fallen into. He kicked his feet furiously, trying to swim upwards. The leaves felt slick and moldy now. He was suffocating. With a jolt of terror, he thought, "I'm in an open grave." The detritus was dense enough for him to push against once he figured out that he had to move his legs together and push them down at the same time rather than kicking them separately, which had made him sink deeper. He started to move upwards. Spork's muffled barking let him know he was going in the right direction. He could see little flecks of light shining through the leaves above him like distant stars. He was almost out when the hands grabbed his ankles. He screamed, then choked on the leaves that rushed into his mouth. He twisted his ankles to free them, but the hands felt welded together, fingers to thumb in a ring like a manacle. You can feel a little flesh slide between bone and finger when you twist an ankle or your wrist while it's being gripped by someone's hand. He did not feel the slide of flesh on these hands. These hands started to pull him down. The stars of hope above him retreated into blackness. Then the dog stopped barking. The deafening crackling in his ears lessened, and what felt like pillows, then arms formed under each of his. The leaves made themselves into something human-shaped that held him up, kept him from sinking deeper into the cold, wet nothing. The horrible descent had stopped. "Now, Mortimer," said a woman's voice from all around him, "you've plenty of worms and grubs to eat. Stop laying these little traps for men. She almost sounded like a cat owner scolding her pet for killing a wild bird. And a voice answered from below, a horrible voice, a skin-crawly voice. Mine, 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 and each time it said the word, it yanked Sean down harder. 'Twas my flesh fed you, rooted trunk, let me eat this, it added like a petulant child. No, bad Mortimer, said the woman, and I'm much more than root and trunk. You forget what's in the dark is mine, and this meat is in my dark, hissed the creature. Sean felt as if he was being torn apart as it doubled its effort. I'll have half at least, said the monster. And you forget, dull hunger, that I'm not just leaves, but the breath that sets them scurrying as well. Through his pain-squinted eyes and kaleidoscope of tears, Sean could see the sky now. The pile was blowing away. He didn't look down, but somehow knew that when the light hit the thing below him, it would crumble. And so it did, but with a horrible howl of pain that haunts his nights to this day, some 70 Octobers since. The rest is vague and swirly, like a pile of kicked-up leaves. The memories twist, rise, and fall. He knows he was lifted up by a beautiful woman whose hair was golden maple leaf, whose eyes were bright green chestnuts, whose great leaf gown seemed to cover the world. Lifted way above the graveyard and sat down next to little Spork, who looked up with wonder as something around them evaporated into air. The dog licked his face. He remembered limping home, and that night his mother joked about how fast he was growing. He had seemed to have gotten 3 inches taller since that morning. There's a fence around that cemetery now, and the young boy is known as Old Sean the caretaker. The whole area has built up quite a bit, and there's even a sidewalk that runs around the place. And one grave with a stone that says Mortimer. It's covered with cement. In the fall, Old Sean is known to make a big pile of leaves next to the sidewalk outside the fence. He leans on his rake and smiles as kids pass by and kick them up into the air. Sometimes, inside the fence, he will rake those same crumpled pages of summer into the shape of a beautiful leafy woman, with a great gown of brown sycamore, golden maple hair, chestnut eyes. He doesn't kick it, though. He waits until the wind takes it away, and sometimes right before they are gone, the red leaf lips seem to smile at him. The end.